So in this demo, we're going to see how to analyze web access logs in Tailpipe.
Yeah. Hey, Maddie. We've recently added the ability to collect and analyze access logs like Apache access logs in Tailpipe. Previously been able to collect logs like AWS CloudTrail logs, Azure Activity logs, GitHub audit logs. We've recently added new capabilities to collect different types of logs, in particular, like you said, the access logs.
Let's see how to do that.
Sure. To get started, what we can do is go ahead and start collecting our logs that we have stored locally on the file system. Okay, so just like other log types, I can go ahead and run a tailpipe collect command, and this time it's for the Apache access log table though. And then what I'm going to do is I have some older log data, so to get around the 7-day window, I'm going to go ahead and collect or specify a from date actually. So what just happened was I ran the collect command. It discovered there were 3 log files containing about 10.5K rows, and it happened under a second. So now what I currently have in my tailpipe table in my log data are those Apache access logs. Notably, for what you can collect with tailpipe, by default, the Apache access log table can collect combined and common format logs automatically. However, if you do have your own log format, what you can do within Tailpipe through the partition configuration is you can actually tell Tailpipe what your log layout is in those files using, the common Apache field syntax. And then from there, what you can actually do is then you can reference that format in one of your partitions in order to tell Tailpipe how to interpret that data and then pull it into the access log table.
So that's great. So if I'm a fussy Apache admin and I like my logs a certain way and they're not the standard, it's really easy just to say, hey, this is how to Mattyify them.
Yep, exactly. And what I'll do is actually just show real quick how to collect these, very similar to what I had done for the previous set as well. So I can just run another tailpipe collect command, and this time it's for the minimal partition that I had called it. So again, and run. I have a small set of rows. This time it's only 95, but that adds on to the existing set. So what I can do now is I can jump into my tailpipe query client and real quick, just to make sure that I ingested all the logs properly from both partitions. Apache access log. So I can see I have about 10.8K rows, which I hopefully tracks. Maybe I might have had a couple left over from a previous collection as well, but roughly around there. And then from here, just like with other tailpipe, I can now continue to leverage SQL in order to just do some analysis against my logs. So as an example, pasting a query here, if I want to kind of just look for any requests out there that have the status data available, I can go ahead and just start to query my data and get an idea of what's in here, what's in my access logs. I have a very small set, I think, compared to most systems, only 10K logs, not really that many. So this would be a much larger set, but even just to start to get an idea of looking through some of the timestamps, the addresses, the 404s, URIs. I'll note there's a couple suspicious ones in here that's a little deliberate, but even this helps me just start to get a basic idea of what's inside my logs and maybe what type of pattern should I be looking for if I'm looking at my logs overall. And just to show a slightly different type of query, this is a bit more aggregate, but if I want to see my top 10 high traffic sources, what I can do is, again, just continuing to leverage SQL here. I can now look and say, hey, based on the remote addresses, who is coming in or who's making the most requests out of my access log. So again, this is just to help me establish patterns and try to figure out what's really happening or what kind of traffic is coming in to my web server based off the access log data that I'm ingesting.
And this is running super fast too, which is great, and it's all happening locally.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I have a fairly small data set here, but I have tested with, I don't know, I want to say a couple 100,000. And I think query performance is not too far off from this. So overall, super quick, especially with everything DuckDB has to offer. So overall, performance has been great, whenever we're querying.
Can we visualize this in PowerPipe?
Yep. So what we, just like you mentioned, through PowerPipe, we have some pre-built dashboards and detections as well that you can leverage as soon as you've collected your logs and have them within Tailpipe. So if I go ahead and start my PowerPipe server, I can jump over. This is what you'll see. So like I mentioned, we do have a dashboard that can help you visualize the data immediately. So out of the box, again, you may not get super in-depth info from here, but overall, just from the shape of a log. So if I look at the logs just from the last 7 days, I can see how many requests, what's the distribution of the status codes, just kind of see trends. Whereas I can see 410, I had a couple more logs than before. And overall, it just kind of gives me just more an idea of what's happening in my logs and if anything stands out. Whereas here, maybe if I wasn't expecting so many 400 errors, something to look into. If I see some IPs here that are higher than others, that might cause, be cause for alarm. Top 10 URLs, who's coming. This data is a little small. Let me adjust it a little bit. I'm actually going to pull back from some of that older data as well to get a larger data set that we can then visualize. So now I bumped up from 100 to 10,000 requests. So I have a lot more coming from this December 22nd date back in 2016.
It was a busy day.
Yep. Yeah. Not quite sure what's happening, but using this information, I can see from this IP 6,500 requests in terms of 5,200 requests against this particular component search URL. And here I can start to just kind of get an idea of, in terms of successful versus error requests, where am I seeing a lot of different type of activity, and then from there I can do a little more deep diving. Within the Tailpipe mod, what we also have are detections. So again, similar to the CloudTrail log detections mods or the GitHub audit log detections mod that we have. Here, what we've done is we've taken a look at some of the more common exploits or vulnerabilities that people look for or you can check for within access logs. And we wanted to create a useful set of out-of-the-box detections that you can run, that you can use. You could also extend if you want, because these are just open source Tailpipe mods that you can clone, download, kind of add your own detections, modify based on your own application needs as well. I'll go through a couple and just to show. So as an example, looking for the local file inclusion type attacks, looking for things where people may be trying to encode path traversals within the URIs in normal detection fashion. The information that's immediately available is you can see when it happened, what the operation and the status code was. You can kind of see from an IP and an a user agent / actor perspective who it was. Do have the full information available as well. So if I want to see all the fields that were available within that particular log line, I can just expand it over here on the right and then view everything that Tailpipe was able to pull in about that particular request.
It's great. We can really dig in when we're doing our forensic analysis there. It's awesome.
Things maybe looking at OS file access, just what are people trying to get to? How are they trying to exploit your web server? A bit more path traversal here as well. Also, we're looking at some more common ones that may, still going on, like the log4shell vulnerability. So immediately kind of looking at these URIs, what are people hitting already, very suspicious. And, I think these type of detections can really help you hone in quickly in terms of finding things like this and just trying to see what are people trying to do against your application. And then, like you said, you can then always drill in a bit more in order to just get a bit more information about who's doing what type of requests. And for these detections, if you want to learn more as well, you can just click this and you can just get a bit more info from the documentation in terms of what are we looking for, why is it important to check for these types of exploits or attacks against your system, along with some reference links out to just more reading on why you should care about results if you're seeing in these particular detections. For the same type of detections, we've actually started organizing them according to popular frameworks. So as an example, the OWASP top 10 from 2021, we've taken all the same detections that I had shown in the previous screen, but really just organized them according to their categories. So there's only category or 1 and 3 here. We'll continue adding more as we get more detections that fit the other criteria. We'll add those benchmarks as well. But in the meantime, I can then see AO1. Let me just see all the relevant stuff here. But if I care a bit more about injection, then I can take a look under that benchmark instead. And then similarly to this, we also have organized according to relevant MITRE tactics and techniques as well, just to give you a different cut, just to offer the most flexibility in terms of how people would maybe want to view this or how they approach it from their organization perspective today of looking for exploits or attacks against their web servers.
We've been looking at this from the context of Apache access logs, but there's other web servers and other web type access logs. What are the other formats? Are there other formats that we can use with Tailpipe besides just Apache?
Yeah. So what we also have Nginx access logs as well, very similar and very similar types of detections as well. Other areas like the cloud, we also have S3 server access logs, some access logs from different ELB types like the classic load balancer, gateway load balancer, network load balancer. And overall, we're continuing to look to expand coverage out into other load balancer type things. We also have WAF traffic logs out there. So in terms of whether it's object storage or WAFs or load balancers or web server logs like this, we have a bunch of others out there today and coming out shortly. And then we're continuing to look to expand coverage based off what users are asking for, just where we can, really, I think, provide helpful queries, detections, dashboards once you pull all that data into Tailpipe.
Fantastic. This is really awesome, Cody. Thanks for watching, folks. If you're getting ready to get started with Tailpipe, you'll find more information and a getting started guide at tailpipe.io.